Hello and welcome to the Resource Nexus podcast. I'm your host, the Elevated Rim. Proud Nietzsche enthusiast, captain of the Dane Danger fan club, and Zed Key truther, or Caleb Boone, whichever.
It's the inaugural podcast, so you know what that means. It's probably going to be pretty bad, but it's like the Millsap doctrine. You got to let a player play, let him get up a couple shots, let him make a couple mistakes, and then he gets more comfortable. That's kind of the plan here, to push through, and if someone enjoys it, maybe I will continue. But we've got a packed episode today, and I think it's going to be a good one. Here's the game plan. First, we're diving into the coaching hot seat, breaking down which jobs we think could come open. Next, we'll talk about the coaches we believe might make a move and the ones we personally like. Wrap it up with a mock coaching carousel. And let me tell you, this part is purely for fun. Realistically, maybe just a handful of these moves will actually happen. Hey, coaching changes are wild and unpredictable like that, but here's the thing. We've matched the caliber of coach to each job in a way that makes sense. So you're getting a reasonable idea of what could happen and the kind of coach each program might realistically land. If you want a deeper dive, I've written articles on each of these topics over at theresourcenexus.com. Go check those out for some extra context. We've got multiple jobs already open in the college basketball world. Virginia, Miami, USF, Louisiana. No doubt more are coming. We've estimated 58 in our mock. The first coach I've got my eye on when it comes to the hot seat, Leonard Hamilton. Listen, after the lawsuit that dropped this week, it's over. Even before that, with the way the last few seasons have gone, and let's not ignore his age, it was already time. But now, recruiting is off the table. The man can't sell a future to a recruit. He needs to take the off-ramp if it's still offered and retire. And if he doesn't, he might get Bobby Bowdened, like another legend who just couldn't read the room and overstayed his welcome. Florida State has been more than patient. This is his moment to bow out gracefully or risk getting pushed. Next up, Kevin Kruger at UNLV. Let's get real. This is UNLV, a program with way too much pride for this. Right now, Kruger's sitting around 100th in year 4, and he's got no top 70 finishes to point to. UNLV has a history of expecting more, as they should, with their support, and that's not cutting it. Then there's Mike Young at Virginia Tech. I get it, Virginia Tech is a tough job, but this is year 6. And not only is this his worst team, hovering somewhere near 150th, but it's been 3 years without an NCAA tournament bid. Sure, it's been respectable to this point, but at some point you got to ask, where is this headed? Speaking of where is this headed, Kyle Neptune at Villanova. Look, he hasn't been a total disaster, but this is Villanova, a program with 2 national titles in recent history. The standards here are different, or should be. And Neptune, he doesn't have the successful track record of even someone like Mike Young at another job. To buy him time, here's the thing. He had a roster that most of us, including me, ranked in the top 5 to 10 on talent. Yet, 2 years ago, they finished 37th. This isn't a matter of tools or resources to have success. The resources are there to win. The question is he the guy who knows how to wield them with the requisite acumen? Now we arrive at the annual Indiana Watch, starring none other than Mike Woodson. Look, it's not a total catastrophe, but let's be real. Indiana didn't pour a mountain of cash into this roster to wind up with the 60th ranked team. This isn't what the boosters signed up for. It's like Villanova last year. On paper, the talent is there. But the roster fit, how did this ever make sense? No shooting, bigs with 0 spacing. It's basketball malpractice. Right now they're sitting at a predictable 310th in three-point percentage and low volume. All right, moving on. Let's talk Rodney Terry at Texas. Texas. The richest school in the country, the gold-plated, marble-floored, we have oil money. Everything is bigger in Texas. They should have one of the best coaches in the game. But Terry, he basically lucked into the gig. Right place, right time, inherited a roster that was already running on autopilot. The system already in place mid-season. The seniors already doing their thing running it. Here's the thing, his resume overall screams Texas El Paso, not Texas Longhorns. Mixed results at best, and let's be honest, even a ranking in the 40s might not cut it. He's in a prove it situation, and the leash. It's looking short, as I think it probably should be for a job like this when you fire Rick Barnes and Shaka Smart and end up with Rodney Terry. Finally, let's talk Kevin McGeehan at Campbell. 12 years, a dozen seasons, and what's to show for it? Campbell is back down in the 300s and hasn't sniffed the top 200 in 6 years. Expectations at Campbell aren't exactly sky high, but come on, this isn't cutting it. And with the move to the CAA, I think expectations should be more, not less. I've seen a game in the arena, and it's nice and newish for this level. But nope. It's Stagnation City, and it's hard to see how that changes anytime soon without a change. It's time. Next up, we've got Jeremy Ballard from FIU, 7th season, sitting at a miserable 250th. And here's the kicker. He hasn't cracked the top 200 since his second year. Yeah, it's probably time. Let's move through these mid-majors a little quicker. Keith Richard at Louisiana Monroe. Tough gig, no doubt, but he's in a solid conference. He's been there forever, and there's been zero progress. Currently sitting at 340th, and no top 200 finishes since 2019. It's time to let someone else give it a shot. Ben Johnson, Minnesota. Look, Richard Pitino got fired for less, right? 4 years in, and things are stagnant. Time's been given, but at some point, results got to show. Robert Morris, he had a solid run early on, but let's be real. We're talking 10 years since he beat Kentucky in the NIT and was a hot name. Since then, lots of unimpressive finishes. Scott Davenport, Bellarmine. Here's a fun one. Davenport's already got a coach in waiting lined up. I think the transition happens. But after the recent downturn, I'm not sure I'd be looking in-house. Anthony Latina, Sacred Heart. Tough job, low resources, but 12 years in with 0 top 200 seasons, 7 seasons ranking over 300, that's just not good enough. What's the opportunity cost here? Time for someone else to step in? Steve Donahue, Penn, 10 years at Penn, and right now he's sitting at 311th, his worst ranking yet. He's had 4 seasons in the 200s over the last 5 years. The Ivy League is a solid conference, typically around 13th or so. You've got to expect better. Shane Burkhar, Northern Arizona, 6 seasons, 0 times cracking the top 215. Even at a place like Northern Arizona, that's pushing it. Dwayne Killings, Albany, 4 seasons and not a single top 225 finish. There's also some controversy surrounding him, but honestly, the lack of results speaks louder. This one feels like it's only a matter of time. All right, let's talk Bobby Hurley. Arizona State finishing 127th last year. Fired the hot seat back up. So far, he's actually exceeded my expectations. But here's the thing. Big 12 play, yeah, that's a whole different beast compared to the Pac-12. Now, don't get me wrong. He's had a nice start. But with the NIL backing he's got, the standard should be higher. I mean, 10 years in, yeah, it might be time to step it up or step out. Next up, Matt Driscoll at North Florida. This guy started the year hot with some nice power conference wins, but it's been all downhill since. Is sitting at 200th right now. And let's just say that's not exactly the direction you want to be heading. They lead the nation in three-point shooting with over 50% of their points coming from beyond the arc. But when you're riding the three-point wave, you're bound to crash sometimes with the variance and regression to the mean. The concept of the offense is cool, but results, not so much. 16 years, man, I think it's time for a change. Now, let's talk Navy. Ed DeChellis has had a good run, but after 14 years, it might be time for a hard look in the mirror. Navy was supposed to be a top 250 team this year by many preseason rankings, had a lot of returners, but they're sitting at 329th. And let's not forget, last season was ranked 323rd, so no improvement. We all get that service. Academies have limitations, but come on. When you return most of your team and still get worse, that's a problem. Let's throw it over to Eric Konkol at Tulsa. Now, I get it. It's only year 3, but Tulsa has way more potential than the 250th ranking they currently have. After a disappointing 184th and 316th finish in the last 2 years, it's safe to say things aren't going as planned. Tulsa's history is rich in coaching talent. Bill Self, anyone? He led them to the Elite Eight and was the cradle of coaches for many years. I am pretty shocked that Kunkel has struggled this badly. He had a solid run at Louisiana Tech and even brought one of his best players along for the ride. You'd think recruiting would be easier at Tulsa than in some backwater, but here we are. This needs to turn around, and fast. Next up, Jay Ladner, Southern Miss. Not much is expected here, but probably more than 5 out of 6 seasons being ranked 240 plus. He's a USM alum, but they deserve better results than this being in a decent conference. Other coaches have won here periodically. I thought the transfer class he had a couple years ago with his unexpected top 100 season was great, but even that one was coming off a 345 ranked dog. He's had time, in my opinion. Penny Hardaway made the bold move of firing all his coaches over the summer. It seemed like a guy grasping. But Memphis has got off to a great start. He's off the hot seat for now, but if things go sideways at all in conference play, I'd still bet this could be his last season. And let's be real, after last year's conference disaster, many Memphis fans probably still have that lingering fear deep down. Penny's not out of the woods yet. Man, Chris Mooney is a survivor. But will he survive being ranked 266th right now? After 20 years, this might finally be the moment Richmond moves on. Sure, they technically won the A10 last year, but come on. How has he survived this long? What's the downside of making a change? What are the rewards? He finishes 80th once every few years, only to fall back to a 200-plus ranking. It's a roller coaster, but with a suboptimal ceiling. If I were a Richmond fan, I would have jumped ship years ago on Mooney. When he took over, this was the premier mid-major in Virginia, one of the best on the East Coast. Not VCU, not George Mason, not JMU, or Old Dominion. They were the first to join the A10, and now, honestly, they've been passed up by several of those schools on Mooney's watch. It's time. Boston College isn't an easy gig, but ranking 169th after being 170th 2 years ago, that's not where you should be after 4 years. And let's be real, that's part of why the ACC isn't the ACC anymore. Even the bottom programs need to be closer to the top 100 or 125 at the very least. They need to be respectable. Earl Grant had a solid year last year, but now, after year 4, we see another step back. Joe Scott, Air Force. It's a tough job competing in the Mountain West, especially at a service academy, but right now ranked 276th with 4 out of 5 seasons being 250 plus. That's not cutting it. Not when the conference is as strong as it is and you get so many quality games at home. You need to win a few of those, especially if you're the underdog. At least make it competitive. All right, let's shift gears and talk about a couple of AAC coaches. First up, Ron Hunter at Tulane. It's year 6, and Hunter's ranked 203rd. It's safe to say he's lost all positive momentum. The type of transfers he was pulling in, like Kevin Cross, Jalen Forbes, and Jalen Cook, those guys just aren't there anymore. For Tulane's resources, 200th isn't cutting it in year 6 after a disappointing year last year. I think he's got to step it up in conference play, or we might see a change sooner than later. Next, Michael Schwartz at East Carolina. Now, it's only year 3, but with losses to Gardner-Webb and North Alabama in bye games at home consistently year after year while barely cracking the top 200 will get the seat warm. He's losing these games while being paid 3 or 4 times as much as some of these coaches beating him. Come on, man. Preseason, ECU was ranked 99th in our talent-only ranking, and ESPN had R.J. Felton as a top 100 player. But it always felt like less than the sum of its parts situation. You've added no shooters, no point guard, and your three-point shooting stats and assist rates were in the 300s. I don't know, man. As a coach, that's a big red flag of stupidity to add a Jordan Riley on the wing and think you have to an already bad shooting team. The team construction never made sense. Moving on to Bill Cohen at Northeastern, this guy's been at it for 19 years, so yeah, he's probably safe. But honestly, the last 3 seasons, without a top 250 ranked team, not exactly inspiring. Right now, he's sitting at Humphreys second. Not great either as a high watermark. I just don't get why a serious program would be cool with these results. what is his ceiling? I mean, at this point, you know what this is, and why not make a move and try to shake things up? Let someone else try. Then we've got George, whatever his name is, Halkovage at Buffalo. I can't lie and say I have watched a lot of Buffalo under him. The only second year coach on this list, but when you're going 330 plus in both of your first 2 years at a program that has won before, when Hurley and Oates were there, something's got to give. This was a place that used to pay Oates like a top 100 coach and has resources. Now they're near the bottom of college basketball rankings with schools with much less resources. I think we know how this ends, and they should go ahead and end this one and save time on the rebuild. And finally, Steve Forbes at Wake Forest. This guy has a strong resume, really strong. He was ranked 28th last year, and let's be honest, he probably should have made the tourney. But right now he's sitting at 100th. No NCAA appearances in 5 years. For a program like Wake Forest, that's questionable. I don't think he's in imminent danger, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. Where we're diving into the top 50 coaching big board in college basketball. This list highlights some of the brightest names in coaching, as well as those who may be looking for their next big opportunity. We've got a lot to cover, so let's jump right in. It's that time of year again when fan bases across the college basketball world begin dreaming of a fresh start on the sidelines after rough starts. Whether your team is struggling to meet expectations or you're just ready for a change, there's always room to ponder the possibilities. No matter your program's level, be it a Power 5 powerhouse, high major contender, mid-major hopeful, or a low major underdog, we've got you covered with a list of buy low coaching options to add to your wish list. Our list will focus on head coaches. While there are many talented assistants, we prefer to see proven resumes from those who have led programs successfully. Additionally, we favor coaches who have worked their way up the ladder, demonstrating their abilities at multiple levels along the way. Contrast this with some blue blood assistants who benefited from being part of prestigious coaching trees under legends like Roy Williams or Coach K. Too often, their main qualification for ascending from graduate assistant to a prime bench spot is having played for those Hall of Famers. Many have never coached anywhere else, so when they take a job like UNC, many struggle. Let's be honest, it's not difficult to look good recruiting or coaching when standing next to a legend at Kansas, UNC, or Duke. Instead, give us the Nate Oates model, someone who started at the bottom and climbed the ranks on sheer coaching talent, not through the good old boy Silver Spoon network. With that in mind, let's explore some realistic options for your team that fit this mold and coaches who may be looking or open for the call. Let's start with Shaheen Holloway over at Seton Hall. He's back at his alma mater, but there are whispers that Seton Hall might not be providing him the NIL support he needs. This could make Holloway a poachable candidate for a bigger job if the opportunity arises. Next up, Will Wade at McNeese State. Wade has been around for a while, paid his dues, and with the new reality of NIL in play, paying players is much more out in the open. He's got the experience and could be a great fit for a Power 5 program that's looking to make a splash. Then we have Mike Rhodes at Penn State. The Nittany Lions have already lost one coach to a mid-level ACC school, so it wouldn't be surprising if Rhodes found himself poached too. A better opportunity could be on the horizon for him, so definitely a name to keep an eye on. Over at Grand Canyon, Bryce Drew has really started to make his mark. The program has more resources and upside than most realize, and after his rough stint at Vanderbilt, Drew will likely be eyeing a good Power 5 situation to make a move. He's someone to keep on your list. Now let's talk about the Mountain West Conference. Coaches like Steve Alford at Nevada, Leon Rice at Boise State, Nico Medved at Colorado State, and Richard Pitino at New Mexico didn't make moves last year, and there's less pressure for them to leave now. But with the league growing and having a potential 6-bid season, they're worth watching, even if it's unlikely they'll jump this year. Moving on, Chris Mack at Charleston. Mack doesn't seem to be in a hurry to return to the Power 5, but if your program needs a steady hand, it's definitely worth reaching out. He's proven himself at the mid-major level, so he could be a good fit for the right situation. Josh Schertz at St. Louis is another interesting name. He's only been there a year, so it's unlikely he'd move so soon, but he's someone to watch. Schertz has the pedigree to eventually make a jump to a bigger program when the time is right. Ben McCollum, the D2 superstar, has been doing great things at Drake. He's a name you should consider calling. His success at the D2 level could easily translate to higher levels, and he's definitely ready for that next step. David Riley at Washington State is another coach who's worth monitoring. It's only been a year since he took over, but with the Pac-12's changing landscape, does he want to stay there long term? It's a question that'll be worth asking in the coming seasons. Then there's Dave Smart at Pacific, the Canadian legend. He's already improved his program by over 100 spots, and if you're looking for a proven winner with international ties, Smart's name should be on your list. Greg Marshall is still out there too. It's been 5 years since he last coached, but if he's made the necessary behavioral changes, he could be ready for another shot. College basketball has changed a lot since he was last in the game, so we'll see if he can still operate at the high level he once did. Ryan Odom at VCU is another solid coach climbing the coaching ladder. His next step should be a Power 5 opportunity, and with stints at Utah State under his belt, Odom is clearly ready for a bigger challenge. Bob Ritchie at Furman is someone who's been at the same school for 8 years. While he's likely to be selective with his next move, his track record speaks for itself. However, his hesitancy to recruit transfers could raise some red flags in today's transfer-heavy landscape. Richie McKay at Liberty has been another name getting attention. His ties to Tony Bennett make him a natural successor at Virginia if the job were to open up. Keep McKay in mind for any coaching searches down the line. Jared Calhoun at Utah State is in his first year at the helm, but with the last coach making a jump after just 1 year, it's something to watch. He could be on the move sooner rather than later if things go well. John Becker at Vermont has done remarkable work considering the lack of NIL support in a state like Vermont. This year's results haven't been as strong, but what he's accomplished there over the years deserves a look. Next, we have Russell Turner at UC Irvine. He's been consistent, never having a sub-150 KenPom rating in 13 years, even with a modest budget at UC Irvine. Turner is one of the most underrated coaches in the country and brings strong East Coast ties with him. He's definitely a coach worth watching. Let's move on to Chris Gerlofson at San Francisco. He's been a solid presence, and in just 3 years, he's built a top 85 team. The trajectory's there, and if he continues this development, he could be looking at bigger opportunities soon. Next, we have Brian Wardle at Bradley. He's a proven winner, having built 2 top 75 teams at Green Bay before coming to Bradley, where he's kept things rolling with 4 straight top 100 teams. His consistency is impressive. Eric Henderson over at South Dakota State has been quietly impressive. Coaching in a place like South Dakota is no easy task, but he's been winning and producing quality transfers. That's a tough job, but Henderson has been up for the challenge. Preston Spradlin at JMU is another coach to watch. He's got a keen eye for talent, having landed players like Broome to Moorhead, and the results have followed. His recruiting and coaching are both on the rise, and it's exciting to see where he'll go next. Then there's Ross Hodge at North Texas. Hodge had a solid first year with a top 80 team, but his background as a great JUCO coach shows he knows how to build programs. People are going to start noticing him soon. Mitch Henderson at Princeton is an alum and has done well with the Tigers. He'd definitely consider a move to the right job, though it would have to be a good fit. He's proven he can coach at a high level, and his experience at Princeton gives him a unique perspective. Nevada Smith is currently an assistant at Marquette, but his past as a D3 and G League head coach under Daryl Morey's experimental system is intriguing. He also worked under Nick Nurse, so there's a lot of potential in his future as a head coach. Next, Casey Alexander at Belmont. It's clear things have taken a bit of a downturn for him. A few years ago, he would have been ranked much higher, but recently Belmont hasn't had the same shine. Still, he's done enough in his career to warrant some attention. Takayo Siddle at UNC-UEW is an interesting case. He's got a 10-deep rotation, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but the guy has won enough to get noticed and likely work his way up the ladder. He's shown he can win at a high level and that counts for a lot. Bart Lundy has been excellent in D2, but making the jump to Milwaukee has been tough. Milwaukee's a hard place to win, and while Lundy's track record is solid, he'll need time to prove himself at this level. Mike DeGeorge at Cal Poly started off strong, coming in with a projected 350th ranked team and now boasting a top 150 net. He's got D2 success under his belt, and it's exciting to see him build something solid at the D1 level. Joe Pasternak, Cal Santa Barbara. This guy quietly had a top 50 net team back in 2021. He's also made 2 NCAA tournament appearances in the last 4 years. Now, it has slipped a little, but I think he could end up around the top 100 this year, and that's pretty good for this level. Austin Clonch, UTSA at just 35. Clonch already has 5 years of Division I coaching experience. Oh, and he was an assistant at Alabama last year and their first Final Four. The results haven't tracked like I expected, but I loved his portal work this offseason. He's also getting things out of Primo Spears no other coach has. He's one to watch. Bucky McMillan, Samford. Okay, here's where things get spicy. The results, I like them. You can't argue them. The style of play, not so much. His leading scorer averages 15 points per game in just 19 minutes, and he's playing sixth man minutes. Come on, Bucky. Play your best guy. This isn't a rec league. It's college basketball. I don't think you max your talent by playing 11 deep and cycling minutes. Your studs could be playing down to the 11th man so he can play 9 minutes instead. Dustin Kearns, App State. Listen, getting a top 85 team in Boone, North Carolina is no small feat. Kearns is doing big things on a side of a mountain. No hate. I'm in Boone 6 times a year. I love it there. The dude's putting App State on the map, and that's not something you hear every day unless you're talking about football. Scott Cross, Troy. Remember when he got fired at UTA? Well, he bounced back like a pro. I'm happy for him, too, because it was one of the stupidest firings I've ever seen in college basketball. Winning at Troy is no joke, and Cross has turned things around in a big way. Resilient, reliable, and making Troy relevant. What's not to love? Johnny Tower, St. Thomas. This guy's a legend in the D3 world. He took his D3 program to Division I, and here we are in year 3, and they're already a top 125 team. But let's address the elephant in the room. Does his success translate everywhere? Coaching? Absolutely. Recruiting? Hey, the jury's still out, but I wouldn't be scared to give him a try. Kevin Ollie, currently a free agent. Yes, it flamed out at UConn, and there were violations. Only 1 year was above 100. But let's not forget, this man won a national title. And here's a fun fact for the haters. I don't know any coach who wins a national title without serious chops. People love to say he inherited a ready-made champion, but the truth? He took over a program on probation coming off a 14-loss season with a first-round NCAA exit. He was ineligible year 1, and year 2 won the title with one barely NBA player. Last year he was the interim coach for the Nets and brings NBA experience now. He deserves another chance, in my opinion. All right, I think that's enough for now on this section. We are a bit in the weeds. We'll move along to the mock coaching carousel in a moment and get a little wild. Now, I do have about 20 more coaching prospects I like we could talk about. These are mostly JUCO or D2 coaches, or even some currently out of the college coaching scene. Names like Jared Grasso come to mind, or Texas Tech assistant Luke Barnwell, who has an impressive high school coaching pedigree. And then there's the lower-level college coaches like Jim Crutchfield, Steve DeMayo, Ben Howlett, Chris Bridges, just to name a few. Some of these guys have lower-level national titles, even multiple national titles. But here's the catch. Many of them are older and, frankly, probably missed the time or athletic directors missed them. I think that's more accurate. It's pretty ridiculous that many of them never got a chance while assistants bomb left and right. Take a school like FIU, for example. It's a total miss they went to an A-10 school to hire an assistant, and he's coached there for 7 years with one top 200 finish when they've got a coach like Jim Crutchfield just 35 minutes away. I mean, come on. I've been saying schools should hire him for 10 years. That window's probably closing now at his age. It's insane. Anyway, if you're curious about the other 20 or so names I've got, head on over to theresourcenexus.com. That's where the full list lives. I also have researched the success rates in another article. Just do a search on From the Trenches, and there are many examples of the Bruce Pearl, Kelvin Sampson, Brad Underwood, and on that started as lower level head coaches. There were about 40 guys a few years back, including about 15 I'd rate in the top 50 coaches.
Okay, so I have about 30, 35 minutes into the podcast, and I'm getting kind of tired of doing this. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to end it here. I know I told you I was going to do a mock coaching carousel, and I will give you that. But what you got to do is like and review, like everyone says. If you waited this long, I mean, hey, it's not that big of an ask, right? And I'll give you the coaching carousel podcast regardless. But I don't really feel like doing any more tonight, so check you later.
Cool. Guess we'll see you around.
All right, check you later.
Bye.
Wait, man, why are you always such a dork, man?
What are you talking
Check you
about?
later. Check you later.